This session, we're going to talk about implementing a hybrid school with portals. Focus on this session will be scheduling models, the portals dashboard, and dividing learning between school and home. We have a few other topics that we'll cover, but ultimately, if you're looking to expand either moving from a homeschool single family to actually building out more of a school setting, you're in a really interesting place. And quite frankly, we're seeing this pop up all over the country. Not everybody can do education on their own. Some people need the support and want the support of a hybrid or a micro school. Now, many families want that freedom and flexibility and the responsibility of a parent-led education, but they also want the community. So it's possible that you might have families that have children that want to learn together with their friends and benefit from other adults participating in a larger group and having relationships beyond their own household. So the hybrid school, the micro school, the co-op, the parent learning community, whatever you call it, can provide those kinds of opportunities. These forms might look very different. In fact, they do. One group might gather for every Friday just to do projects and field trips. Another might meet 2 or 3 days a week to share subjects and have guest teachers. Ultimately, still, the families are working together both from the home and from the school setting. Churches often provide rooms where several families can do this together, and other hybrids actually rent or own space where they're building out a more formal school setting. The name doesn't matter as much as the clarity of the arrangement when you're dealing with parents. So in this video, we're going to use the phrase hybrid school for a learning community in which multiple families retain a meaningful role in their children's education while sharing some of the instruction and other responsibilities with other families. So we'll move from vision to implementation at some level, but if you're listening to this, I'm expecting you want to focus more on how do you use portals with the hybrid school setting. So let's begin with the why. Why would you do a hybrid school? And this is going to help us connect to portals. Before you have a building or a schedule or a list of classes, groups of parents define why they would do it. Usually this starts with an enthusiastic parent saying, wouldn't it be great if we just did this together? And that's a good beginning, but it's not yet a shared vision. Parents can be imagining a lot of different things, and one family wants more social opportunities, another wants help with difficult subjects, and others simply want to be able to work part-time and drop off their kids. So what different parents are imagining could become a conflict area as that develops. So remaining spoken as to your expectations and making clear those expectations is going to help to gather parents around a clear vision and mission for the school. When are we going to try to meet? What do we want children to experience? What responsibilities remain with the family and which responsibilities are going to be with the school? What are we going to do together? What are we going to do apart? And what does Christ-centered mean in daily practice? Here's where Portals comes in. Portals is a Christ-centered educational model. And so more than just a curriculum, we integrate a Christ conversation in every subject area. Different parents are going to come from different places on that. We try to leave that discussion to you as the parents and as the teachers of a micro school or a hybrid school. In other words, we don't black box discussions of faith. In a traditional or government school setting, they simply don't talk about Jesus with any kind of regard or respect. They leave it out of the conversation, believing neutrality is good. However, in education, there is no such thing as neutrality. You're always teaching kids values. So the net effect of a non-Christ-centered education is that you raise atheist kids or even Christian kids, but their life in Christ is separate from their day-to-day life. And they've learned that over 13 years. We don't believe that's good education. We believe that your life should be centered on your spiritual values, direction, and goals, which are, for Christians, going to be clearly expressed through the Word of God or the Bible. And so we integrate the Bible, and we feel we don't put limits on our lesson planners to integrate that Christ-centered conversation in any subject and at any time. You as a teacher or as a school could determine what that looks like. So also important to this discussion is multi-age learning. Most hybrid schools aren't big enough to have a different teacher for all 13 years of education. And so multi-age environments become very important to hybrid schools. Portals is that. We're designed for multi-age learning environments. This is great for the family. It's even better for hybrid schools trying to build out what that looks like. In addition, Hybrid schools allow, because they're in different environments, both the hybrid school environment and the home environment, it allows for different kinds of projects and activities, field trips. And Portals is built for that too. Portals is not only Christ-centered, but it's project-based. We move from literature, great books, but then we do something with those books. We're not just readers, we're doers. So ask yourself what you're deliberately trying to become when you build your Portals school. A Portals learning community begins with the conviction that education is not just information, it's about formation. Students grow in wisdom, skill, character, faith, and relationship by doing things together. They should be reading worthwhile material, and that's outstanding. Good curriculums have worthwhile reading material, but they should also be thinking through those ideas and doing work around those ideas. Let's start by talking about the model of hybrid school. There is no single correct hybrid model. There is not even research showing that I'm aware of that shows what models work better than other models. Essentially, you want to have an enriching experience for your kids. That's your measure. So families can complete academics at home, or you can do the academics at the school. You can gather for projects at home or at the school. Science labs, art exhibits and galleries, music, physical education, field trips, ministry, presentation. All of these things are activities that you as a team are discussing who's going to do what and where. A subject partnership then can be simple or it can be highly complex with calendars and everything laid out. As long as you agree as a group of families that how you're going to do it and where you're going to do it, you're in a hybrid model. So subject partnership might be the first or the simplest of those arrangements. Families agree that they're going to study the same history or use the same texts for history or literature or even a science course, and then they're just going to meet periodically to discuss and do projects around the same curriculum. In this case, you'd all want to be using the same textbooks or the same literature as you do that. A 2-day hybrid might use community or shared instruction for the days. In other words, you might take a class and have it done at the hybrid because you're going to do other classes at home. So you might do mathematics in the home, but you're going to do reading at the hybrid. Usually this has to do with parents that feel like they want specialized teaching in certain areas. Or if there's kids struggling in certain areas, they want help to teach that, and the hybrid becomes really appealing for that. A 3-day hybrid might carry more weekly teaching, clearer staffing, facilities. There might actually be tuition included, attendance agreements, family agreements, which we'll talk about later. In those settings, you're dealing with the more days a week you're at the hybrid, the more formal that hybrid starts to become. A church-based hybrid might operate several days each week and have paid teachers or mentors. And at that point, the program's going to need administrative structure. You start to deal with tax code and IRS and child safety laws and insurance and those kinds of things. So the simplest model of just a couple parents gathering together and working together versus even a more complex hybrid model is going to be based on your needs and what you're doing. But complexity will grow quickly. Every additional meeting day creates more scheduling, more communication, more supervision needs, more cleanup costs, and each additional student can add in that direction. Not merely another person or another person in the room, but more record keeping, more data, another family to communicate with. So it's easy to grow from the 1-day community to the 3-day community as you do things one at a time and growing at a slow and an easy pace versus trying to take it all on at the same time. A good first year might be one consistent gathering day and a limited number of families, and using various spaces so that you start to think of, well, maybe the church works well for this and the community center works well for that. Having several well-planned projects or community days can be a great start to a hybrid school. As soon as you start to do this organizational work, you need to decide who has authority when. Shared education works best when shared authority and responsibility are clear. Parent-led doesn't mean leaderless. Parent-led and final decision-making authority with the parents doesn't mean that you might have some expectations as a hybrid school. Someone has to create the calendar. Someone has to make final scheduling decisions, and you will rarely get all families to agree on some of these things. You have to communicate those changes, make sure that the entire group knows what's going on and why, and then monitor the process to solve problems immediately. You may even make decisions that don't work as a hybrid school, and you need to go back and readjust those things as you go. Get comfortable with innovation, get comfortable with trying things, but also not being so rigid that you can't back off of a bad decision. A very small consensus of friends can operate easily, but as the group grows, consensus becomes less and less possible, requiring a board or requiring a smaller group of people that make final decisions for the group. Establish a coordinator or a small leadership team right off the bat, and then you'll have as good a leaders as you create. Allowing them to make decisions and being ready to submit or play along with things with the understanding that you all have the same common goal is going to help your leadership team. Define which decisions the coordinator can make and which decisions need to be made with the entire group. Or understand the scale and the scope of every decision that's there. The more of this that you can outline in some sort of bylaw document or common agreement, the better off and the less conflict you'll have down the road. For example, a coordinator might make or manage a facility or put the calendar together and do the enrollment process and do routine weekly communications, but teachers might make daily instructional choices, whether or not to use this project or that project with the agreed curriculum. In that case, the coordinator and the teacher need to stay in their lanes, or you'll have conflict. A leadership team or a board might approve major changes to tuition, scheduling, doctrine, curriculum, or even a safety policy, but those things should be clearly defined ahead of time. Parents still retain responsibility for their own children, even when they work with an organization. Home day work, individual choices, pull-out, or individual learning can all be communicated easily and effectively, allowing the parents to retain their rights as a parent while still working with the group in the hybrid setting. The primary advice or suggestion that we would have from Portals is put it in writing, try to anticipate as many of these things ahead of time, and oftentimes schools will find out if they can work together as an organization or if they need to just remain friends, even in this initial decision-making process. At a minimum, define who leads the program, who controls the curriculum, and who enrolls and dismisses a family, who supervises the students, who communicates with the facility, and who handles the money, and who responds to safety concerns and what your emergency plans are. All of these together help you navigate how the decisions will get made, and clarity protects your relationship with your friends. Ambiguity makes places for people to get upset, and you'll know when those happen because you'll find them. If it does, get together, gather, figure it out, and again, continue to revise or define those relationships as best you can in writing. This leads to a family agreement. Every single family that joins your hybrid, once you know the purpose and who you are and you've laid it out, they need to understand and agree to what it means to be part of your hybrid school. This document doesn't have to sound harsh or legalistic. It should explain, here's the community, here's our goals, this is what we're doing here, and what we reasonably expect from any family that's going to participate in our hybrid. So this is more than just a parent permission form. It's a kind of statement of covenant that you're going to have with another group of people. So in this document, you can explain the schedule, when you expect students to be there, when pickup times happen, what happens when a parent doesn't pick up their children, attendance policy, parent participation and expectations, home assignment and homework that needs to be done, and how that gets communicated, and what behavior standards you expect for kids. All of these things protect the hybrid school. But they also protect the parent. The parent knows what they're getting into, what's expected, and they can make rational and thoughtful decisions before they ever sign up or get engaged with the hybrid school. Clarify whether or not parents are part of the learning process, and if so, how. And if parents leave, you can also identify how that departure happens. If there's an exit interview or an exit survey to understand how your hybrid school can be better. Explain what happens when a parent doesn't fulfill their assigned responsibility. Is that parent expected to find a substitute? Are they expected to contact the coordinator? How is that notice and that communication going to happen? And define the difference between an occasional problem and a pattern of problems. This is often left out of these agreements. What's the difference between a one-off or something that continues to happen? And at what point do you define it differently? Every family is going to have a late morning, a sick child. They didn't get to the homework this week. That's going to happen on occasion, and we need to have grace in those situations. But repeated lateness, consistently irresponsible parents, unpaid fees, disruptive student behavior, those things have to be addressed or they become a burden on the entire group. The agreement should explain how concerns are handled and encourage parents to be in communication with your coordinator and with the teachers in your hybrid school. Review that agreement together as a community. Your initial group of families should be on the same page with that agreement, and then talk about it and invite questions and any kind of revision that might need to happen before you agree on it. A good agreement makes everything transparent to everybody. Okay, designing a weekly rhythm. Hybrid school should not be created like a 5-day school week. Simply removing 2 or 3 days is not means that there's less learning going on or that the student responsibility for learning is only 2 or 3 days. It begins with outcomes, but the assigned work and the kind of work that's done needs to be clarified, and creating a good weekly rhythm for that can help habits work in your favor. Community days can be part of a calendar or a rhythm too. Community days can be weekly, and they're valuable for discussion, for read alouds, for guest teachers, for interesting projects that are unique. You want everybody in the same place at the same time. So having those weekly or monthly community days or home days can be really essential to your calendar. You know that already. 1-day community model is probably the simplest option, right? Families use portals at home for 4 days a week, and on the 5th day, they gather to do the relational and the hands-on projects, or projects where you need different unique supplies. Typical gathering may include scripture and prayer, a shared literature or history discussion, a science lab, a project, a lunchtime, then some more physical activities and student presentations. And then this model can allow families to participate, or the parents can just drop off their kids. But at least you have some time where the staffing and the facility costs can be predictably arranged for. A 2-day hybrid creates a stronger rhythm. One possible design uses Tuesday and Thursday as community days, where Monday, Wednesday, Friday are at home days. Tuesday launches the week's ideas, gets through the key readings and the guided practice, and then Thursday, the kids come back to show off their experiments and their projects or thoughtful critique of the literature that you're reading. All those presentations and pieces can happen. Splitting up from a 1-day to a 2-day means those 2 days can have a different rhythm and feel to your week. Another 2-day design divides by purpose rather than sequence. The first day might emphasize Bible literature and history, and the second day might emphasize science, math, and writing. So you're splitting it up by subject or what you're doing during those days. The days then might look fairly similar in that you're doing subjects when you come into the community days. Mathematics and individualized reading might remain primarily at home, but you're essentially creating a very different rhythm when you decide that we're going to divide this up by subject areas. Moving to a 3-day hybrid can create more direct instruction. It starts to look more like a school, but it also changes family expectations. It's a much lighter burden on the family. A Monday, Wednesday, Friday model, for instance, might use Monday to do introductions to its subject or content, Wednesday to practice it or collaborate or to do think about it questions, and Friday to do all your projects and apply and present what you've learned. Tuesday and Thursday then become focused home days where you're preparing for the community days. This can work well for families that want more structure, but it does require dependable staffing, available parents, and a clear attendance expectation. So controlling and organizing the 3-day week becomes more of a challenge. Whatever model you choose, you build the day from the learning blocks rather than trying to fill every minute. Portals lessons commonly flow from read, think, and do. You can divide your day by those blocks, or you can divide your day by subjects. A community block might therefore begin with worthwhile content, move into the think about it questions, and then end the day with creative action. Those three parts don't need equal time. You can determine what time is appropriate for your kids and your community. Use a simple homeschool test for every assignment. You can ask, does this become better because students and mentors are together? Does it need specialized materials like a larger group, or immediate feedback or a shared audience? If yes, you may want to block out time for it on your community day. Does it require quiet repetition, individual pacing, parent coaching, or independent attention? Well, if you say yes to that, maybe those are blocks that you send home. The handoff between the settings has to be explicit. And so the end of every gathering, parents should know what was completed and what should happen next at home. Portals can help with that. If you have different Portals accounts for each teacher and student, you can simply mark thumbs up, thumbs down, or check on every piece of every assignment: read, think, and do. That shows you exactly how far you got at school and where you expect the parents to pick up with the learning. And as they finish it, they also then can check those things off as they get them done. We do have some micro schools, however, that don't want to be in the dashboard that much, or they don't want student accounts. Well, that's fine. You can still reference or use the language from Portals to communicate with parents. We completed lesson 32. Please pick up on lesson 33 at home. And with a simple group email, you can communicate what happened during the day and wrap that into a package for parents to pick up on the next day. If you split up subjects, this gets to be a lot easier because you can do those subjects independently in the different locations. At the next gathering, you then begin with what you left off on. In addition, you have Note to Portals and Note to Self and a calendar function on the dashboard. When you look at any lesson, off to the right-hand side, you can see a small little calendar button. When you add that to your calendar, it's easily shareable with parents or with the community. And so once it's a calendar event, you can treat it that way and build it out. Using the Share with Calendar, you can then assign projects to community days so that parents know what's coming on Friday, and they're not doing that project at home because that's one you're going to reserve for the hybrid. Finally, as you're building out your day and your rhythm for learning, make sure you leave breathing room in every community day. There should always be what government schools call passing times, or times when children can just move, get food, get a drink, use the restroom, and those transitions aren't hurried and stressful and anxiety building. Your mentors need time to reset too. So your teachers at a hybrid school need downtime, and they need time to think, to set up, to take down. So make sure you're allowing those things in your calendar as you schedule your time. A schedule that's full on paper might be overcrowded in practice. Tune into that, recognize it, and use better blocks of time to make sure that your workday is not only doable, but enjoyable for everybody involved. That said, thinking about your weekly rhythm is one of the key parts of building your hybrid school. Hopefully, Portals actually helps with that and takes some of the stress and anxiety of sharing academics right off your plate and built right into the system. Teaching through the Portals model. Portals gives a hybrid school a common educational rhythm, tools to do it with, and the best part, a great book list to build off of for your curriculum and meaningful projects that go along with that book list. This is done as simply as we can make it. Students read the content, they think through the conversation with you, and then they do something meaningful with what they've learned. Community learning then is strengthened on each part. It's worth our time looking at the Portals model. We've had other sessions on what it is and what a lesson plan looks like, but I want to really focus in on the various activities that are part of the Portals model that you're going to bump into and what to expect in a hybrid setting. Reading can become a shared experience. It's not always individual. So even if you have older kids reading on their own, coming back together in a hybrid to have those conversations can be a valuable block of time. A mentor might do read alouds. You might have a mom that's outstanding at reading aloud various literature, especially Bible, literature, and history. Having a great reader for those can be an advantage to the hybrid model. Older students might need quiet reading spaces. So when you do your hybrid, you might need to make reading nooks or spaces for people to read. If you're using a Portals model, reading's a heavy part of the daily activity. And either you can offload that to reading at home, but you're always going to want to do some reading at the hybrid, especially when you want to connect it strongly to the project or activity. Families can study common books even when the assignments differ and you do different projects. Even when conversations differ, those readings can be the common thread that ties your hybrid together. The think section of the lesson also works with hybrids. The think can create group conversations. So these can be amplified when the conversations start in the household. Kids have a chance to talk about it at their home, but then also come back to the hybrid and have a second conversation that is informed by those first conversations. They'll have and be ready to support their conclusions, to talk about the reading, to speak clearly, and bring new ideas that they didn't get in the home setting. And so building on other people's ideas, learning how to disagree respectfully, learning how to have those conversations becomes part of the advantage of the hybrid model. And of course, doing is a great fit for a hybrid. Doing can become a lot more ambitious when you have a hybrid setting and you have people coordinating the projects. Supplies are ready. The group can have a presentation. They can conduct larger experiments because there's more people to be part of it. So some of this might be to actually have a musical performance or an art show, to have a market day where they're taking their businesses and showing them off to each other, building something substantial together as a team, serving and doing ministry together or doing outreach together. Interviews and can be conducted at the home. One of our categories, the interview, you interview other people than your parents to get other perspectives on issues of note. So in a hybrid, you can have interview days where they can complete those kinds of projects easily. So obviously, field trips fit with a hybrid environment too. If you're doing a field trip, you can organize, coordinate, and even get group rates if you're going to places that have tickets or admission fees. I want to shift to, when using Portals with a hybrid, one of the features in there is the dashboard. And we talked a little about this when we talked about daily rhythm. But each lesson plan and each read, think, do has a thumbs up, thumbs down, and a check for done, and a little pass button. Those can be communication tools between your hybrid teachers and your parent teachers, and they can see what each other's doing in their environments. I also mentioned the calendar button, and the option to add calendar is a feature that's been added for hybrid schools. You see a project or something you like, you can easily share that, or you can add it to a calendar using the share or the calendar button in the lesson plan. This makes it easy for parents that are working together in a hybrid setting to actually share their thoughts and opinions about what activities we should be working on. Separating the subjects and finding that rhythm, hopefully we've made that easy. Shared learning doesn't mean identical assignments for every kid. That's one of the dangers of the hybrid model. If you're using Portals, it assumes that kids are going to do projects differently, they're going to answer questions differently, they're going to have different interests and different passions. That can be a weakness for your hybrid, or it can be a strength where you actually allow for that. Meaning, if kids do things in different ways, that creates delightful conversations to have at the hybrid school. How did you do this and why did you do it? And looking at how different solutions to problems can inform versus compete. Protecting younger students from being constantly compared to with older students, they'll find students their own age that they can compare notes with. Protecting older students from always being the assistants at the hybrid school and always being the ones that have to help out and step in with younger students can also be something that a hybrid school helps to create structure and order around that. What does healthy fruit look like in a hybrid school? What are we looking for? And so with Portals, we often on the Hub support want to help people do that kind of reflective thinking around their home education, but also in hybrid schools and micro schools. How do you know whether your school is succeeding? So success isn't just merely enrollment and size of school or a busy calendar or even having a nice social media thing going. We're looking for fruit, and the Bible tells us to look for fruit. We're looking for students to be engaged in their lives. And this means reading and thinking and doing. It also means independence and responsibility and skill and kindness and faith and joy and peace. We want to see that their lives are blossoming. Do younger students and older students work together? Are parents actually more confident as educators because of the hybrid, or are they just dropping off their kids? Do you have shared responsibilities, or do you have one person essentially carrying the load for the whole organization? These are all measures of success for your hybrid. Do families understand the schedule? Are things being communicated clearly? Are problems addressed quickly and graciously? Is the program financially stable? Is it emotionally stable? Does the community strengthen the family relationships and the parent stewardship, or does the hybrid school essentially displace them? Portals exist to equip parents and mentors, not to replace them. Your hybrid school should do the same, sending families home with more tools and more resources to be the parents that God's called them to be. So evaluate the program seasonally. We recommend that you do that. Ask the students how it's going. Ask your parents how it's going. Ask those that are working at the hybrid school, how are things going? Reviewing your attendance, responsibilities, confusion can be cleared up as you do these things. Obviously, having an annual audit or at least a review of the finances of the school is a good idea, and it can help build leadership capacity as they make decisions and see results. So celebrate what is bearing fruit. Most hybrid schools are so busy getting it done that they forget to kick back and relax and have a summer picnic where you celebrate the accomplishments of the year. Simplify what you've done, how you've done it, and improvement means adding these things over and over and over again. We want to clarify and focus on what we're here to do and what the purpose of the organization is. And as you have success in that, share it and be able to celebrate it together. A successful hybrid day begins with a clear purpose, and it's built on relationships. We believe portals can help you do that by helping the academics be well organized. Choose a model that fits, understand the relationships and roles, pick community time to be organized and structured, but also allow time to breathe. And then as you pick your projects and your activities and your courses and assign those, hopefully your hybrid school is off to a great start. Expect challenges. Every community has to deal with patience, humility, and forgiveness, and make adjustments as you go. But don't confuse difficulty and growing pains with growth. Healthy collaboration, healthy schools grow, and they grow through those things. So you now have a shared curriculum with portals and a common rhythm, read, think, do. Parents can understand that too, and you can move forward together. You don't need a large building or anything like that. What you need are committed families. So you now have a clear purpose, a trustworthy team, workable agreements, and the willingness to serve one another. Begin there and start with lesson 1. Build what you can sustain and let the community grow as you go. Blessings, and God bless your hybrid school.